Hello, you are watching Shalom World News. I'm Rory McLennan coming to you from Glasgow, Scotland. Here are the latest headlines from around the world. On Tuesday, the Holy Father repeated an appeal to stop using the name of God to incite hatred and violence. Pope Francis said religion should not be used to incite hatred, extremism, or blind fanaticism. Meanwhile, Pontifical Charity Aid to the Church in Need said that there is a new escalation of persecution against Christians and other religious groups. Managing Director of Aid to the Church in Need in Germany, Florian Ripka, said they are receiving reports of Christian persecution on a daily basis. He pointed to the burnings of churches in Pakistan, the violence against Christians in the Indian state of Manipur, and kidnappings and murders in Nigeria. Ripka also mentioned the mounting persecution of the Church by the Nicaraguan regime. He also reiterated that Aid to the Church in Need supports oppressed Christians around the world and stands up for the human right to freedom of religion. In Pakistan, where several churches and homes of Christians were burned, Archbishop Sebastian of Lahore visited those affected. The prelate visited families in Jaranwala in the Punjab province, listened to the woes of the people and comforted them. Archbishop Shaw said they need human closeness as well as psychological and material help. He added that Caritas and several Christian volunteer groups are bringing relief measures to Christians in Jaranwala. He was accompanied by members of the Muslim community who offered their solidarity with the victims of the attack. Meanwhile, Prime Minister of Pakistan Anwar ul-Haq paid a visit to the affected community and promised government help to bring the culprits to justice. As many as 19 churches were gutted and 89 Christian homes were burned down during the August 16th mob attack by violent Muslims. In the American state of Indiana, the Supreme Court on Monday refused to rehear a lawsuit challenging the almost total abortion ban. The lawsuit was brought by the American Civil Liberties Union of Indiana. With the top court denying a rehearing, the ban on abortion will come into effect once a June the 30th ruling upholding the prohibition is certified. The procedural step is expected to take just a few days. On the 30th of June, the Supreme Court ruled that the abortion ban does not violate the state constitution. This removed a major obstacle to enforcing the ban approved by Republicans last summer. In the US state of New Jersey, a judge has temporarily halted 3 school districts from enforcing a new policy that mandates informing parents if their child expresses a desire to identify as non-binary. It was in June that the Manalapan Englishtown Regional School District, the Marlborough Township Public Schools and Middletown Township Public Schools enacted their respective parental notification policies. New Jersey Superior Court Judge David Bowman allowed the state's request on Friday for a preliminary injunction against the policies in the wake of a lawsuit against the 3 districts by Democratic Attorney General Matthew Platkin. However, Judge Bowman clarified that he was not rendering a final judgment about the arguments presented by the state or the school boards. In the American state of California, a church that was fined for breaking COVID protocol has filed a federal lawsuit alleging the local government spied on and tracked Christian worshippers. In the lawsuit, Calvary Chapel San Jose and Pastor Mike McClure accused Santa Clara County and the data firm SafeGraph of conducting an invasive and warrantless geofencing operation to track residents. The lawsuit was filed by Advocates for Faith and Freedom. The plaintiffs accused them of using a location-based tool to track individuals through their mobile phone data around the church property to ascertain when and where worshippers were on the premises. The lawsuit, which was filed on Tuesday in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California, alleged that County Counsel James Williams and County Health Officer Sarah Cody ratified the surveillance operation targeting the church. In Poland, the lower house of parliament has approved new legislation that prevents organisations promoting the sexualisation of children from entering schools and preschools. Although similar bills were passed by parliament last year, the president vetoed them, saying the initiatives lacked social acceptance. As many as 243 MPs voted in favour of the bill, while 202 voted no. The bill will now have to go through the upper house of parliament where the opposition has a majority, but it cannot overrule the lower house's legislation. Finally, President Andrzej Duda has to sign it unless he chooses to veto it. The legislation contains ideas from earlier bills, such as the requirement that non-governmental organisations visiting schools must submit information about the content of their guest lessons to the school principal. Since the Taliban came to power in Afghanistan 2 years ago, more than 200 former soldiers and officials have been killed extrajudicially, in spite of the general amnesty announced by the regime after its takeover. As many as 800 cases of gross human rights violations were recorded in a report by the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan. The violations include arbitrary arrests and detentions, as well as torture and enforced disappearances. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk said in a statement that the report presents a sobering picture of the treatment of individuals affiliated with the former government and security forces of Afghanistan since the takeover of the Taliban. In Muslim-majority Egypt, a 9-metre-tall statue of the Virgin Mary has been erected in the province of Asyut. The statue was in a government plan to develop the route of the Holy Family Pilgrim Trail, comprising around 20 locations in Asyut province. These include caves, trees and other spots where the Holy Family halted on their flight to Egypt. The sculpture was made by Professor Gerges Said Al-Ghali at the Faculty of Fine Arts at the University of Minya. He started working on the project a year ago and made several models. The 10-ton statue was inspired by the 8.5-metre-high statue of Our Lady of Lebanon in the pilgrim town of Harissa. Given the dimensions of the statue, it was made in parts and then assembled. In Nigeria's Plateau State, the chairman of the Christian Association of Nigeria, Father Polycarp Lubo, said the systematic killings in the state have a long history. He was alluding to the murder of 21 Christians in the state just last week. The priest said that atrocities should be investigated and the authorities should identify the perpetrators of these evil acts. The priest said arrests are rare and those in power seldom have the willingness to speak about the crimes. He also added that authorities are not doing anything to help displaced Christians in the region. In the United States, an appeals court panel has ruled to end a prohibition on an Alabama law that bans the use of body-harming sex change surgeries and experimental drugs on youth suffering from gender dysphoria. On Monday, the United States Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit unanimously upheld the right of Alabama to enforce its Vulnerable Child Compassion and Protection Act. Circuit Judge Barbara Lagoa authored the panel opinion, concluding that the district court abused its discretion in issuing the injunction, as it applied the wrong standard of scrutiny. Lagoa wrote that the plaintiffs have not presented any authority that supports the existence of a constitutional right to treat children with transitioning medication subject to medically approved standards. Circuit Judge Andrew Brasher authored a concurring opinion criticising the claim that the law violates the equal protection given to people on the basis of sex. New York's Cardinal Timothy Dolan will offer Mass at St Patrick's Cathedral in Ireland's Armagh on the 27th of August to mark the 150th anniversary of the dedication of the cathedral. He will also preach during the Holy Mass of Thanksgiving. It was on St Patrick's Day in 1840 that Archbishop William Crawley laid the foundation stone of the cathedral, but the Irish famine disrupted the construction work as funds were distributed for the relief of the poor. The work resumed, however, in 1854 under Irish Primate Joseph Dixon, though it was under Primate of All Ireland Daniel McGettigan that the edifice was completed and dedicated on Sunday, August the 24th in 1873. Irish Archbishop Eamon Martin has invited the Irish faithful and members of the Irish diaspora whose ancestors contributed to the construction to join in prayers of thanksgiving on this special anniversary. War-torn Ukraine is witnessing a record peak in the number of marriages registered in the country. In the first half of this year alone, over 86,000 couples tied the knot. Many weddings took place in the regions of Dnipropetrovsk, Odessa, Kyiv and Lviv. Meanwhile, the director of the Institute of Demography and Social Research, Ella Libanova, has said that the war is a disaster for the population. Studies say that Ukraine has lost about 1 million people, with many being killed or leaving the nation. Libanova said the loss is a catastrophe for the country in a moral, mental and quantitative sense. Close to 1,000 residents of California rallied on the state capitol steps on Monday to protest against bills that they say would take away their rights as parents. The attorney and co-leader of the pro-family Our Duty group said that more people need to speak up until the authorities cannot ignore the voice of parents. Speakers at the event criticised several bills making their way through the state legislature. They allege that the bills seek to diminish parental authority over children in education and in raising children in line with religious or moral values. One bill in the Senate allows a minor to receive transgender medical services without the permission of their parents if mental health professionals determine that parental involvement would be inappropriate. Another bill seeks to change custody laws by mandating the court to consider the parent's affirmation of the child's supposed gender identity or expression as part of the health, safety and welfare of the child. The third edition of the March for Women and Life will take place in Mexico on the 8th of October this year. In previous years, the march had brought together more than 1 million people. The main events will be held in Mexico City, and parallel events will take place in other Mexican cities. One of the sponsors of the march is the life dimension of the Conference of Mexican Bishops. Bishop Jose Herrera Quinones of the Life Dimension said that the march was born from the firm and clear conviction that the country requires a message that inspires confidence in the hearts of each and every Mexican. This year's march has the theme of "We continue to believe in Mexico." The prelate also expressed hope that the march will encourage everyone to renew trust in love for all, including women, unborn children, and all who are marginalised. And those are your latest headlines. Do join us again tomorrow for more, and do remember, you can always visit swnews.org for more updates. Shalom.